I want to ask you a question, and I'd like you to notice what happens in your body when I ask it. Ready? Here we go. How are you doing? I mean, really, how are you doing with everything that's going on right now? Now, when I asked that, did you feel anything shift? Maybe there was a tightening in your chest, or you had a little spike of anxiety, or maybe just a wave of exhaustion. That reaction, that physical response to even thinking about current events, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Because for a lot of us, and especially for empaths and highly sensitive people, the news isn't just information anymore. It's become something that we're carrying around in our bodies. Hi, everybody. I'm Rob Volpe, the empathy activist, and this is Reading Between the Lines, where we explore empathy in our everyday lives. Today, we're going to be talking about how to stay informed without losing your mind or your empathy. And yeah, those two things, staying informed and protecting your empathy, those two things can coexist. In fact, I'm going to make the case today that setting limits on your news consumption isn't actually giving up on empathy, but instead it's how you protect it. You see, this is something that highly sensitive people and empaths have to deal with every single day. This is their normal life. But there's a paradox within that, and it's something that's worth exploring and something we can all learn with. As I'm recording this on February 15th, 2026, there's a lot of news that's been going on, things that are just shocking and hard for people to imagine could be happening in this day and age and in the place in which we live. And so it's worth exploring. It's coming up on how do I actually manage this? How do I set up boundaries, but still remain empathetic, still remain connected? So let's get into it. So here's something that happened to me on January 6th, 2021. I was here in San Francisco, thousands of miles away from Washington, D.C., sitting in my living room, which is just through that door over there, and I was watching the news like most of you probably were. And even from that distance, I felt like I was there on the steps of the Capitol amidst the throngs, watching, but feeling helpless, feeling overwhelmed. And honestly, it was so dissonant what I was seeing that after about 20 minutes, I had to turn off the TV. I couldn't take it anymore. And now I want to actually normalize that experience because my reaction wasn't dramatic. It wasn't an overreaction. What was actually happening was that my nervous system was doing exactly what nervous systems do when they're feeling overwhelmed. And here's the neuroscience behind this, that helplessness, that overwhelmed feeling that I was having. When we experience emotional pain, not physical pain, but actual emotional pain, our brains are activating specific regions in the cortex of our brains. And those same regions activate whether we witness someone else in pain or we're experiencing it ourselves. So yeah, like our brains don't clearly distinguish between our crisis and a crisis that we're watching or reading about. And that means that every time you scroll through distressing news, your nervous system is processing it like it's happening to you. Now, a lot of people, when we're reading the news, watching the news, seeing it, whether it's from traditional media outlets or on social media, it can be uncomfortable, but it can be manageable. We might feel it, maybe we get upset, but then we can very quickly move on about our day. But for people that are empaths or highly sensitive persons, and that's 1 in 5 to 1 in 3 adults, so it's a sizable part of the population, the processing that's regularly happening goes deeper. It's a lot more thorough. It's more felt. It actually stays and it can start to accumulate. And given the kind of craziness of the times that we're living in, the news events that seem just kind of beyond belief, we are all, so even more of us are having that stimulation sensation, that feeling of overwhelm. And so it starts to accumulate. And as a result, conversations I've had, people keep talking about like, I can't check in, but I feel bad. I want to know what's going on. I need to pay attention. But how do I do this? How do I do this and still be present at my job, with my family, with my friends, with my community? What can I do? And that's more of what we're going to be taking a look at. So, how do we keep all of that emotion and feelings from accumulating where we're not feeling the weight of the world and the weight of the person that we're talking to? How do we stay lighter? The analogy I keep coming back to is pasta. So, you make pasta, water in a pot, boiling, salt it, throw in the pasta, let it cook for so many minutes, and then you drain it. And when it's done, what do? You take that pot and you pour the water and the pasta into a colander. And the colander allows all the water to strain out so you keep the good stuff, the stuff that you need, the pasta. And that's how healthy consumption and processing of information is supposed to work, where you're taking it in, processing the things that are relevant to you, and letting the excess drain away. But that's where, when there's an onslaught of news, when there are things that are just overwhelming beyond belief, that's where we can get into trouble, whether we're an empath or highly sensitive person or not. Instead of pouring the water and pasta into a colander, we pour it into another pot and we end up taking it all on. And so that means the information, the emotions, the weight of it all, the facts, the details, it all gets really heavy in that pot. And then when the pot's too heavy, we can't think clearly, can't make good decisions, can't show up for the people in our lives. So the image I want you to hold on to today is the colander, where you can keep what you need and you let the rest drain away. It doesn't mean that you're abandoning the information or the people that are affected by it, but you're not carrying all the water too. You're carrying the things you need that you can use so that you can help or support another person or make a decision that you need to make. So I've got a few practical tips that I want to share, but I also want to talk about the paradox that a lot of us run into. And when you first hear the phrase, like, you need to set limits on the information you're taking in, or you need to set limits on your news consumption, something you might resist that. You might feel like you're abandoning your values or what's important, that maybe you're being complacent or that you don't care enough. And I want to push back on that, because the more that you're overwhelmed and burned out by the news, the less you're actually able to show up empathetically for the people in your life, whether that's your colleagues, your family, your community, the people that you can actually help. So setting limits, setting those boundaries doesn't mean that you don't care. It means that you're protecting your capacity to keep caring. It means that you are sustaining yourself. You are sustainable. And the world needs sustainable empathy right now a lot more than it needs a bunch of burned out people that aren't able to rally and do something to take care of each other. And that becomes the paradox. The paradox is that by setting limits, I'm actually expanding my ability to care. Okay, time for some practical tips. These are a few things that actually work, and I'm going to be upfront that some of these I use myself and some I'm still working on. First one, there's a couple about timing. And the first one I want to share, I call the news sprint. So the way this works, set a timer for 15 minutes and then consume news intentionally. And when the timer goes off, stop. No more scrolling. This prevents that thing where you look up after you're reading a bunch of things, you go down that rabbit hole, and then all of a sudden hours have gone by and you feel bad about yourself and the things that you're missing out on. So the news sprint, set a timer for 15 minutes. What helps me with that is I skim headlines. I look at headlines. I don't always need to read everything, but I look at what something's about, or I'll read the text instead of going deep and watching a full video. Also, avoid those bookend times, first thing in the morning and right before bed. The reason for this is that your brain is vulnerable in those windows. It gets you upset first thing in the morning. You don't want to start your day that way. It also can keep you up at night because your brain starts going over and over. Don't give the algorithm access to you during those times. Also, thinking about the platforms that you're using and where you can, one of the tips is to turn off autoplay. You can actually do that. You're going to find a link to an article from TechCrunch. I'll put it into the video description here as well. And that talks about how you can turn off the autoplay. And that way, you're not letting the algorithm decide the distressing content that's coming next. So Facebook and X let you do this. Instagram and Threads, not so much, but I know on Instagram you can actually control a bit more of what the algorithm is putting in front of you. That can also be helpful. Additionally, go text first when possible. So reading about something activates your brain differently than watching a video of it. And certainly if you think about the murders that happened in Minneapolis, if you watched those, it feels very different than just reading about it because video is more visceral, it's more immediate, and your nervous system knows the difference. You're processing it in a totally different way. It's also still important when you're taking all this information in and empathy turns into compassion and you want to then take action, and you should. And I talk about this as the one action rule. So find that one concrete thing that you can do, whether it's making a donation, volunteering some time, contacting a representative, reaching out to people that you might know in an affected area to check in on them. Do that thing and then step away. Doesn't mean that you're ignoring the issue. You're actually engaging with it without it letting it consume you. And think about it as one action at a time. So next, being self-aware, so critical to all of this. Before you open up a news app or you get into the socials, do a quick body check. Like, how are you feeling right now? And if you're already feeling depleted, that this probably isn't the moment to add more weight to the pot. Think colander, not pot. Check in though, if you do go ahead and get online, and it happens, we all do it, but check in again after 5 minutes of consuming. Notice what might be happening in your body. If your body's having a reaction, if that tension is building, if you maybe have some shallow breathing, that's your body telling you that it's time to step back. And then the last one that I love is what I call a mini meditation. So just close your eyes, deep breath in, longer exhale out. Repeat that a few times and notice what's coming up in your mind. And if you need to, visualize the colander, that hot water and steam pouring through while you're holding on to the things that you actually need. So whether you identify as an empath or a highly sensitive person, or maybe you don't identify that way, but you're still feeling overwhelmed right now, and that's okay because what you're experiencing is real. It's valid. And it can lead to conditions known as empathic distress and compassion fatigue. Now, I've written about that in the past. There's another link to that in the show notes down below. But the idea here is that you get overwhelmed. You don't know what to do and how to help. And we've talked about some things that you can do to help. Compassion fatigue, very similarly, and this happens a lot in the medical field, where how much compassion do you have? How much can you give to other people? And you do get fatigued. And so you need to do the things to set boundaries and recharge and take care of yourself. I often advise to people to do the things that feel right to you. Hopefully you have the self-awareness of the things that recharge your energy. For some people, that is engaging in a hobby or a favorite activity. For me, exercising, going for a swim, getting on my Peloton are good ways. Cooking and baking also helps me. Being outside in nature is also a good one. Spending some time with my cats. So if you have a pet, if you've got kids of your own or kids in your life that you can go play with and be a kid again, that can be a lot of nurturing support and rejuvenation to help recharge the batteries. And so while these things feel like you might be pulling back, it's actually not. You're developing intentional practices of compassion and empathy. And that can help reduce your own burnout. It can reduce the fatigue and the distress. So this isn't about caring less. It's actually about caring smarter. Now, I want to leave you with the image that closes out every conversation and speech that I give on this topic. The world needs your empathy. Your workplace needs it. Your family needs it. Your community needs it. But they need you present, not depleted. They need you engaged, not burned out. That's what boundaries give you, not detachment. It actually enables presence. So use the colander, hold on to the pasta, but let the hot water drain out. I'm Rob Volpe. If this resonated with you, please share it with a friend and subscribe here on YouTube. Additionally, you can subscribe to the email newsletter, Reading Between the Lines. That link is in the description. And I want to hear from you. What's one boundary you're going to experiment with this week? Drop it in the comments. I read and reply to everyone. Thanks so much. See you next time.